we've seen erosion of parental rights and the lifting up of children as entities with agency, younger than 18, right? And so we've already seen this around the public health stuff, right? And that is very integral in terms of school-based health systems. Okay, so that's what this slide shows.
Also, I was trying to find the video, but there's a World Economic Forum video that I got a couple years ago. It's on one of my hard drives, where it was kind of like in envisioning what's the world going to look like. I think it was in like 2050. But they were talking about children actually having the right to vote. And that's again, like,
I've got that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you found it. Oh, great. Perfect.
I've got a screenshot of that. So.
Oh, perfect.
So yeah, so this is the voting, vote 16 USA. So things are getting, and like we've seen, and again, we should value children's input totally. Like we should cherish children. We should value their input. Children don't have a lot of life experience, right? So there's things that youth bring to the conversation. There's things they can't bring to the conversation because they haven't been around long enough to actually have experienced some hard knocks, been betrayed, have bad things, know the ropes. That's just how it goes, right? And so you need a collaboration between youth and elders. And we've seen, I think, within the Greta phenomenon, the focus of lifting up youth exclusive of community and saying that youth voice matters more than anybody else's voice, which I think is very dangerous because the youth need guidance. We need each other, and to have it separate and to be framing it separate is a problem. But this is also part of the consent. And so, there's some stuff in there that sounds problematic. There are things that happen in virtual spaces that are inappropriate. And as we know that people have been stalked online and then found in the real world, including children. And then we have seen increasingly now we have haptics with this, and we have you can be psychologically damaged with assaults, verbal assaults and visual assaults in digital spaces. And I don't think as a culture we have come to terms with what that means before we start throwing the door open to children being in these spaces no matter what, right? So this is age of consent for sexual relations. And France, they're talking about setting 15, but then in the legislation at the time, and this is, I think, a couple years ago, they were saying, well, originally they had put it at 13, right? And so I know, like, my primary focus area isn't the pedophilia, but it's a huge issue, especially in terms of recent events, the idea of trafficking and trauma of children in this way. So this is another huge problem around the consent. All right. So we've talked about consent. We've talked about issues of assault really in digital spaces, both grooming children in virtual spaces and potentially harming them in the physical world, or potentially even just assault in the virtual world that happens through emotional harm, haptic harm. And this is not like cancel culture stuff. This is real. Like, I mean, when I first saw the first virtual reality headset demonstration in 2016, the guy had put it on his sister-in-law and she was on a roller coaster, and she was kind of squealing being on this roller coaster. Now, I hate roller coasters. It's not anything I like. And so when I saw that, I said, this thing is a torture device. Like, this thing can totally be used as a torture device. And I don't think in this idea of like enlightenment, progress, disruption, people are willing to look at these technologies in the dual use nature of it, right? So if you can be sexually assaulted in the metaverse, that's the MIT Media Review. And then the FBI is talking about targeting children in video games more broadly. That was, this summer in Cleveland. So the consent, if we're talking about literally that poor children in Morelia can be set up now, and I know that they would say, oh, it's only a card trading, and it's not the augmented reality area next. It's not the virtual reality stuff next. If you're essentially advocating that play to earn is a viable career opportunity, it's not just going to be the card trading game. I mean, it can't be, because even like UNICEF is saying that a new educational model is virtual reality headsets, and those are being piloted in Chile as well. So, you're really going to try to like carve out a tiny slice to justify that what you're doing is safe, knowing that the trajectory of the whole thing is incredibly unsafe and dangerous. So, I mean, the other thing is like, surprise, surprise, predatory finance, right? Predatory money situation. So Roblox, it's a free game, but then if you link it to your parents' money, right, or your Bitcoin wallet, that you can over purchase, right? And kids don't have any understanding of value and costs. And so they're buying things for their avatars, right? They're buying in-game things. And this is being encouraged through the online education behavior management program, so that training children through this PBIS systems and the class dojo systems to strive in this very behaviorist way towards certain social behaviors to earn tokens and points that will be useful in the metaverse for their avatars. But it's not just behavioral script, because once you link it to your credit, that whether it's your personal credit or your family's credit, then that becomes predatory, and that's done on purpose. That doesn't just happen, oops, by accident. That is part of the mechanics of the system. So again, this is just revisiting, children are sovereign, and if they want to make a living, they should, by whatever means they choose, so long as it is consensual. Is that radical? The sovereign part, parental rights. When I was doing my research around adverse childhood experiences, Scotland is being targeted as the first ACEs-aware nation. About 5 years ago, they passed a law where they were actually assigning a non-family member minder to every child born that was not of their family to keep an eye on them for the state. Now, that was eventually rolled back as against their constitution, but it took quite a while. And so, while I agree with what Derek has said about children being state property, undermining parent rights and control over their children is also a huge problem. And I think there's been a number of sensational cases, many of which like connected to health, medical kidnapping, those sorts of things, that try to erode family rights. But I think that's because we have such a ripped up, shredded social system, community system. Like, we have no communities anymore that are held accountable for giving them what they need and keeping them safe. And like, clearly the whole reason I'm here having this conversation is I'm trying to keep kids safe and trying to hold adults, like, to tell them in advance what's coming so that we can do our jobs, because children they can't do it for themselves. And these policies that are happening around the world, and again, in the cloud-based world, they get one pilot up, and then just like ALEC or these other bill mills, like even in different countries, they get it in place and then they expand it throughout. That's part of what the Bloomberg What Works government model is about, what these different global things are about. I mean, they'll paint it as sustainable or equitable or just or about, caring for children, but it is none of those things.